In the opening scene, a woman passes away clutching a button in the snow. Flash forward 8 years, and we meet an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama, who are at an orphanage hoping to adopt a kid. As they're leaving after their first visit, Mrs. Sonoyama's hat slips off her blonde bob and flutters in the wind. A handsome young boy snatches the hat mid-air, and the couple instantly falls for this charming orphan. Just before they head out, they spot another boy outside, who looks just like the one inside. 2 months later, the couple is celebrating their new addition, a lovely boy, who isn't so new anymore. They eagerly show him his room, and he's over the moon about having his own space. While the Sonoyamas get busy redecorating the room, Mr. Sonoyama notices a big box and tries to check it out. Hitori, whose real name is Dali, stops him and asks if he can decorate his room himself. The thrilled parents agree and sneak off to start dinner. The second they leave, Hitori's innocent look turns sneaky. He pulls out a box cutter and opens the box to reveal a boy who looks just like him. As the two oddball boys go about decorating the room in their strange way, Mr. Sonoyama pops in to call Hitori down for dinner. Once the coast is clear, Dali's twin pops out of his hiding spot, and they exchange cheeky grins. Downstairs, Dali praises Mr. Sonoyama and digs into the delicious meal. When Mr. Sonoyama asks if Dali likes the clothes he picked, Dali pretends they're too small. Mr. Sonoyama promises to get him new clothes and asks what style he likes. Dali insists on 2 sets similar to what he's wearing, and although the couple tries to sway him, Dali says he's only comfy in his quirky style. As they ask about sweet Hitori, Dali's gaze darts to a hidden corner where his brother's head peeks out from behind a plant. They confirm Hitori's age at almost 13, and at the same time, Dali lifts his leg. Dali's identical twin creepily crawls out from his spot and swaps places with him to snag some dinner. When the imposter thanks Mr. Sonoyama for the meal, the unsuspecting couple beams at their handsome boy. After dinner, Mr. Sonoyama shows Hitori how to give shoulder massages. Meanwhile, the creepy twins work together to knead the old man's shoulders without raising any eyebrows, leading him into a blissful state. Under a makeshift fort in their room, the brothers congratulate themselves on a successful first day. Hitori's twin calls him by his real name, Dali, and they agree to be careful and master the art of being one person. While the twins are sketching out a design for Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama's fancy house, Hitori, who's being played by Dali, calls his twin Miji's name before pointing out the sun that's just come up. At breakfast, Dali secretly feeds Migi under the table and assures him they can chill and act casual around their new parents. After breakfast, Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama chat about how to help their son feel laid back and cozy with them. The older couple shares their many daydreams about the memories they want to create with their child, all while Dali eavesdrops from just a wall away. Migi sneaks into his room, smirking, and pulls out a cookbook from his shelf. He calls Mrs. Sonoyama Mom and asks if he can read next to her. Dali flips through the cookbook, excited about making a cherry pie. Mrs. Sonoyama, who just moments earlier gushed about teaching her kid to make pie, can't believe Miji's interest and joyfully offers to show him how. As Mrs. Sonoyama shows Dali how to make the pie, Migi hides and listens in, intrigued by her instructions. They discover a different side of their adoptive mom when she gets frustrated about making pie knots. The doorbell rings, and she turns on her sweet side to greet the guest. While she deals with the visitor, Migi joins Dali, and the two boys manage to tie up the pie together. When Mrs. Sonoyama returns, she's surprised to see the pie all tied up. As the pie bakes, Mrs. Sonoyama admits she's always wanted to teach her kid how to make cherry pie. While Migi stays quiet under the table, Dali asks her how the pie lesson went. She tells Dali it was even better than she expected, and he pretends to enjoy it, lying through his teeth. Migi catches Mr. Sonoyama gazing at his wife and his adoptive son with a dreamy look, which makes him grin at his next sneaky plan. In the backyard, Migi pretends to struggle to reach a tree branch while acting like Hitori. Mr. Sonoyama sees his son needing help and rushes over. Migi says he's trying to put a birdhouse up in the tree, and Mr. Sonoyama brightens up and asks if he can sit on his shoulders. After struggling to lift Migi high enough, Mr. Sonoyama collapses onto the couch with pain relief patches all over his back. In the twins' room, they poke fun at the old man for thinking he can haul them around with his achy, bony back. The mischievous twins come up with another sneaky plan to encourage him. The next morning, while Dali plays tricks on Mr. T, Migi climbs the tree, places the birdhouse, and throws a rope down to Dali. Dali wraps it around himself and asks the old man to lift him. As Mr. Sonoyama stands up, Dali pulls himself up with the rope to lighten the load and keeps the old man from seeing Migi perched in the tree. That evening, the twins pat themselves on the back for winning over Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama and share some other cool things they learned about themselves that day. 7 years before they were adopted, Dali and his brother, Migi, are watching the wind sway the trees while holding onto their mom's only remaining possession, a gross old pajama button. Fast forward to now, Mrs. Sonoyama confirms to Mr. Mr. Sonoyama that their son is taking a bath and can't be heard, and suddenly their sweet vibe flips to something creepy and sneaky. Sonoyama pops into the bathroom and sees two outfits hanging up. She grabs one and leaves the toilet, while Migi pops his head out of the hot water. He throws a fit about being the hidden twin, and Dali makes up some story about how much he loves pajamas. While Mrs. Sonoyama and Migi bond over their blonde hair, Dali watches them from a crack in the ceiling. In the twins' room, the eerie twins plot to snoop on the townsfolk. Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama come in to tell Migi they're heading out for errands, and when he asks to join, they nervously say no. Once the old couple leaves, Dali figures they're hiding something. The mysterious twins pull out a blueprint of the house, share a pair of long gloves, and start rummaging through their adoptive parents' room. Migi finds a touch and crawls under the bed, pulling out a G-string, which they decide to turn into a parachute. Their dog smells the G-string and starts chasing Migi. He drops the G-string, and the creepy bros pick another room to search. They stumble upon a super disturbing poem from Mr. Sonoyama fantasizing about hangout time with his son Hitori. Then Migi finds a picture frame and spots something behind it. Dali takes out the couple's photo and reveals a much younger Mr. Sonoyama carrying a young lady who isn't Mrs. Sonoyama. They jump to the conclusion that their adoptive dad is shady before moving to the last room in the house. There, they discover a hidden space in a makeshift Arctic and freak out at all the human hair wigs on the wall. Migi wonders if Mrs. Sonoyama's hair strokes mean she wants to make a wig out of his hair. Suddenly, the door gets tugged, and Migi realizes the dog is trying to warn them their parents are back. The twins slip out to follow Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama. They eavesdrop and catch the old couple dreaming about a gift for their son's welcome party. When Dali peeks, the couple bursts into laughter, and Dali gasps. Back in the twins' room, they talk about the welcome party, which involves a supposed haircutting machine, and they cook up a payback plan. The next day, Dali gets his adoptive parents to wear black outfits to match him before heading to the kitchen for some bottles. At the welcome party, while Dali hangs out with other kids and Mrs. Sonoyama brags about how quick the adoption process was, Migi sneaks some hot sauce from the ceiling into Mrs. Sonoyama's wine. She takes a sip and freaks out about how spicy it is. Dali offers her some clear liquor, and in a panic to cool off her mouth, she downs it. As a tipsy, Mrs. Sonoyama wobbles over a game board. The creepy twins are thrilled their plan to torch the old couple, and their house is coming together. After Migi offers to kick off the burning, he spots one of his buddies from the party. The kid compliments Miji's hair as he walks by, which Migi finds creepy. Their whole plan crumbles, and Miji's heart races in fear under the blindfold. He lifts it and suddenly acts crazy. Realizing the plain old bicycle is the machine, the couple got to turn his hair into a wig. Migi passes out while Dali watches from behind a curtain, using his magnifying glass to heat his brother's back. Later that night, Dali takes care of Miji's burnt back and confesses he never expected the welcome party to be legit. He wonders if the chick in the pic is actually Mrs. Sonoyama after all. Dali points out that the human hair wigs were fake, and they've still got more to uncover about their parents. Migi admits he's not used to a real family, and Dali helps him up and leads him out through the window to see their mom. The twins remember their childhood with a vivid first memory. They hid under a dark bed, surrounded by flea-patterned wallpaper where they doodled childish designs. Their unusual mother reached out to them. They lived in a tiny room with her until she decided to move to her dream village. Sadly, their mother was brutally murdered on the streets, and the little boys had to dig her grave. Before they buried her, they found a button in her cold hand, which they turned into a necklace that they've worn since that tragic night. Now, at dinner, Mrs. Sonoyama asks her son if he's interested in joining the Boy Scouts. Under the table, Dali secretly feeds Migi, while seriously asking his adoptive parents if the Boy Scouts are just a way to get rid of him. When they promise they want to keep him as their son forever, the twins head back to their room to plan how to solve their mother's mysterious death. They decide to break into every house in the village by joining Boy Scout activities, making friends, and tricking them into inviting them over. On a camping trip, the rich kids mock the awkward twins for their desperate attempts to make pals. Migi, stepping up as Hitori, approaches the snobby boys, who agree to be friends if he can pass their friendship test. He's asked to walk a rope stretched between two poles, and the boys start placing bets on him. After some wobbly attempts, a caring kid named Akiyama sees Migi fall. Migi, who switched places with Dali, gets back on the rope. The twins take turns, repeatedly falling midway. The kind kid and the others watch with a mix of pity and amusement as one of the twins crawls along. He remembers struggling in a similar situation and sympathizes with the creepy twin. Cheering him on, he urges Hitori to finish strong. Inspired, Hitori makes it to the end. After the challenge, Migi tries to remind the snobs of their pact, but they brush him off. The kind boy approaches Migi and offers to be his friend, inviting him to his house while Dali lurks creepily in the shadows. The next day, Migi visits his new friend with a cherry pie. When the boy lets Dali inside, Migi sneaks in before the door closes. As they enjoy the pie, the boy mentions his parents are at work and his sister is asleep. Migi quietly explores the house and gasps after peeking into a room. When the nice kid shows Dali his room, Migi points out that the last room he checked has the same flea-patterned wallpaper. Dali warns him that it's their host's sister's room, and he should be careful not to wake her as he looks for any kiddish doodles on the walls. As Migi sneaks into the sleeping girl's room, he curses his brother for always dumping the messy stuff on him. While Dali keeps Akiyama busy with some mind games, Migi checks out the wall behind the bed. The twins freak out when the sleeping girl suddenly grabs Miji's arm, and Akiyama shows Dali his creepy bird mask. Dali plays it cool and tricks Akiyama into not looking in his sister's room by offering to be the buddy who eases his loneliness. While Migi is hidden among the girl's stuff, Akiyama gives Dali a hug. After their tense day, the twins spill their thoughts about their new buddy's place. Dali complains about how hard it is to make friends, while Migi daydreams about his encounter with Akiyama's sleeping sister. Dali snaps him back to reality, reminding him they've got a mission to hunt down their mother's killer. The next day, one of the twins introduces himself as Hitori to their new friend's mom and grandma. While the adults welcome the new friend, Migi remembers his chat with Dali about the sketchy invitation they got. Migi vows to keep his feelings in check and stick to the plan. As Migi tries to connect with the weird, spoiled man-child, Dali peeks through a slightly cracked wardrobe door. Migi does his best to hide his irritation with the bratty kid, and introduces him to a game they supposedly played in the orphanage. Dali sizes up the place and decides it's way off from what they're looking for, planning to drag his brother out of the stranger's house. He peeks through the door and sees the chubby brat bullying Migi and mocking him for being an orphan. Dali takes over for his brother and tricks the kid into going another round. He wins, smacks the brat's head a few times until Migi steps in to protect the kid's head with a helmet. After giving the bully a reality check, Dali excuses himself from the house and promises to give the scared boy a friendly nod on their next Boy Scout outing. One afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama introduced their adoptive son to their housekeeper, Mrs. Mikan. When Dali, who's pretending to be Hitori, finds out that the housekeeper takes care of other houses in Oregon Village, he gets curious and asks her about the layout of the village jokes. Dali gives a mean look to the maid when she refuses to spill details because of her confidentiality agreement, and Mr. Sonoyama steps in to explain that it would be embarrassing if Mrs. Mikan told someone else about his underwear situation. Mrs. Sonoyama jumps into the chat and spills the beans that their son has cute striped undies, which makes Dali lose his cool when the adults burst out laughing about his striped panties. In his room, Daki throws a fit over being embarrassed about wearing the striped panties, while Migi creepily laughs at Dali's silly impression of Mrs. Sonoyama. The twins decide to use their impersonation for their plan. While Mrs. Sonoyama and Mrs. Mikan are doing laundry, Migi subtly sneaks out an SOS sign for Mrs. Sonoyama to see. She rushes in to help her adoptive son. Dali then takes advantage of Mrs. Sonoyama being away and tricks Mrs. Mikan into telling him about a house in the village with water flea wallpaper. Dali remembers the homeowner's kid from a welcome party and thanks Mrs. Mikan for talking too much. He grabs the striped panty from the line but puts it back after Mrs. Mikan tells him how much Mrs. Sonoyama loves her son. That night, Daki thinks back on the happy times they had with their mom and decides they'll figure out a way to befriend the homeowner's son at school the next day. The next morning, Migi and Dali get ready for school in Oregon Village. While Dali takes the bus with his adoptive parents, Migi rides his bike to school like a total goof. Once at school, Akiyama meets up with Dali while Dali searches for Eiji, the homeowner's son, on the notice board. After looking around, Dali finds Eiji's name in the advanced class list and asks Mrs. Sonoyama about it. During the assembly, Migi arrives as Dali listens to Eiji give the morning speech. He spots Maruta, the brat he schooled a bit ago, and a random kid makes fun of him for being an orphan. After the assembly, Dali warns Akiyama to steer clear of him to avoid being bullied by association. In the bathroom, Migi tells Dali that the only way they can join Eiji's class and befriend him is by passing a special exam. Realizing academics isn't their strength, the twins decide to connect with Eiji between classes. A few boys mention Eiji in the restroom, and Migi pops out from a stall. He praises Eiji for his assembly speech and says he's a friend from their Boy Scout days, but when Eiji sees Migi's lower classman badge, he claims he doesn't know him. The creepy twins realize Eiji distances himself from lower classmen and agree to work together to pass the special exam. That night, while Dali makes fun of their terrible pop quiz scores, Migi gets lost in thoughts about the pretty girl he saw at school earlier. Dali tries to snap his distracted brother out of his daydreaming and reminds him that their main goal is to find out who killed their mom. Dali sees the bright side of Migi having a crush and tells him to make his crush notice them. The next day, Migi learns his crush's name is Sally, and she likes smart guys, especially boys like Eiji. Migi nervously bolts out of the room, and Sally pulls off her black wig to reveal Dali's creepy face. Dali chuckles about how he started dressing like a girl a few years back after getting kicked out of the library and laughs at Migi swooning over his female disguise. He then decides to use his Sali disguise to trick Migi into studying. A few days before midterms, Migi confesses his feelings to Sali, and she promises to return them if he gets 100 on his English test. After the midterms, Dali smirks at his own scores and waits for Migi to reveal his. Migi shows up disguised as Sali and proudly displays his perfect scores. Dali recalls how hard his brother studied and suggests they go on a date. During the date, Migi gives his imposter date a dolphin necklace, and Dali feels guilty for messing with his brother. He makes up a story about moving far away. Migi drops the dolphin necklace and breaks it, picking up one half. Migi suggests they keep the half necklaces to symbolize their bond. That night, Dali comforts a heartbroken Migi, praising him for his effort. The next morning, Eiji is shocked after seeing the twins' midterm results. At night, the creepy twins are hyped about raiding Eiji's house. Dali offers to search the place while Migi keeps Eiji busy. Meanwhile, Eiji starts to notice something weird about his new buddy. The next day, Migi and his adoptive parents come over for dinner at Eiji's place, while Dali sneaks around looking for a room decorated in a flea pattern. As the adults chatter away about cherry pie, Eiji pulls out a blouse and asks Migi if he recognizes the design. Migi instantly identifies it as belonging to his late mother and stands up to check his pajama button. Eiji asks Migi if he looked around his neck for the stolen button, and Mrs. Sonoyama jumps in to defend her son. While Eiji's mom and sister continue with dinner, Eiji orders Migi to take off his clothes. Dali signals his scared brother from a hidden spot, and they share a glance. Migi suddenly starts crying to buy some time, and Dali sneaks up behind him to cut the necklace off his neck. Eiji loses his cool and rips Miji's shirt off just in time, while Dali catches the detached pajama button. Eiji notices that Miji's neck is bare and pulls down his shorts to check his behind. Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama say it's time to leave, but Eiji calls his dog to sniff out the missing button. Dali freaks out and tries to throw the pajama button far away, but the dog chases after him under the table, making Dali panic about getting caught. Right before they peek underneath the table, Migi fesses up to stealing the button. He grabs it from Dali, who's hiding, and shows it to everyone in the room. Eiji's mom asks the old couple what kind of morals they teach their kid, and threatens to report them to the orphanage if they don't let her take care of Migi and set him straight. In a basement, Eiji is feeding a tied-up Migi some dog food while grilling him. He wants to know why Migi has a button he lost 8 years ago, while Dali tries to distract the trained dog guarding the room so he can rescue his brother. Surprisingly, the dog bonds with Dali, and Dali promises to play with it after he saves Migi. Dali sneaks into the room and wakes Migi up from his nostalgic dreams. He tries to unlock the basement door, but Migi says he'll stay back to distract their captors while Dali searches the house. Dali tells Migi he searched everywhere, but found nothing like the flea wallpaper. Migi then remembers hearing piano music near their room in the past, and Dali quickly connects the dots. He asks Migi to check the wallpaper in the room he's stuck in, and Migi recognizes the childish scribbles on the water flea wallpaper design. Migi starts crying, catching Eiji's mom's attention. She walks in and feeds Migi baby milk, then creepily asks him to grow up to be just like Eiji. Dali spends several more days lurking around and trying to figure out this strange family and why their mom had Eiji's button when she died. On Wednesday, he decides to break into Eiji's dad's office, but Mrs. Mikan catches him. Dali remembers that Mrs. Mikan helped him discover Eiji and his mysterious family's home, so he tries to trick the housekeeper into revealing the family's secrets. Mrs. Mikan plays dumb and scolds Dali for sneaking into the room she opened. Dali ignores her and pulls out the family photo album. He sees his mother's reflection in Eiji's mom's champagne glass and asks Mrs. Mikan about the woman in the reflection. Curious, Mrs. Mikan agrees to help Dali dig into the Ichijo family's secrets. Dali uncovers a secret room with a diorama of the entire village. They discover disturbing dolls that look like the villagers and a stack of information on every person in the village. The two amateur detectives hear footsteps approaching, and Mrs. Mikan hides Dali in a box, promising to clean up the mess they've made in the Ichijo's secret rooms. Dali crawls out from his hiding spot after watching Eiji stroll down the hallway. He spots a dog treat rolling on the floor and wonders what happened to Mrs. Mikan. Feeling hungry, he notices the friendly dog offering its bowl of treats to the stranger lurking under the table. Putting together the things he discovered in the secret room, Dali decides it's best to get his brother out of that risky house, but Migi won't budge. He insists he'll force the Ichijos to spill their secrets. In the next scene, Migi fakes baby noises and sneaks in questions about the family's secrets. Mrs. Ichijo brushes him off and puts him in his place. After she leaves, Migi takes it upon himself to act like a real toddler and trick the strange woman feeding him baby food into letting her guard down. Mrs. Ichijo sneaks a peek into the room where Miji's kept and stops him from munching on a Lego block. Acting a bit nuts, she teaches the grown boy how to stack Legos. As time passes, Migi gets better at playing the perfect toddler. While Dali hides and reads in Mr. Ichijo's home office, he hears weird sounds coming from downstairs. He wonders who's hanging around when only Mrs. Ichijo and Migi should be there. Dali bolts toward Miji's room, but hears a toddler crying. He peeks through the door crack and sees Mrs. Ichijo teaching Migi how to walk. Dali can't help but laugh, and Migi spots his brother behind the door, forcing himself to stay in character. Migi tricks the kooky woman into thinking he struggles to stand, falling to the ground to sell it. Mrs. Ichijo rushes to pick up the fallen toddler, praising Migi for toughing it out and acting like a true Ichijo family member. Migi sneaks a smirk at Dali behind the door, and Dali gives his brother a round of applause for his award-worthy performance. Migi moves from the creepy nursery to the dinner table where Mrs. Ichijo introduces him to Eiji and her daughter. Migi plays along with the family's antics, claiming he's a 5-year-old toddler. Dali continues hiding under the dining table, smirking at the ongoing mission. Migi pretends to be in a questioning phase and sneaks in some interesting queries. Dali discovers the strange family shakes their feet when they lie. After a few questions, Eiji starts to suspect Migi hasn't completely been brainwashed into thinking he's still a little kid. He asks Migi if he still remembers his old life, and Dali jumps in to lighten the mood. He tickles Miji's feet, causing him to burst out laughing. Mrs. Ichijo tells Eiji to give her 5-year-old son a break. Later that night, she tells Migi he'll be going back to his adoptive parents the next day, leaving the twins furious that their plan to uncover the Ichijo family secret and their connection to their mom's death is getting cut short. Migi shows Dali the wall they doodled on. When Dali sees his mother's writing on the wall, he totally loses it and starts crying. After some sulking, Dali and Migi go over what they've figured out and start connecting the dots. Dali shares that all he knows so far is that their mom was the Ichijo family's maid, and this weird family has a model of the whole village in a secret Arctic room that they use to spy on the villagers. He also mentions that Mrs. Ichijo runs this weird conditioning program whenever her husband's out, and Eiji sometimes wets the bed. Migi jumps to the conclusion that Eiji must be the one who killed their mom, but Dali shoots that down, pointing out that peeing the bed doesn't make someone a killer. He adds that out of all the creepy family members, Mrs. Ichijo is definitely the shadiest one. A moment later, Dali gets a bright idea. Dali dresses Migi up as their dead mom and hangs him on the other side of Mr. Ichijo's office door. Mr. Ichijo walks in and freaks out, hugging what he thinks is the body of his old housemaid. He calls out their mom's maiden name and asks where she's been all these years. Dali gets totally creeped out and pulls Migi back. Mr. Ichijo starts searching the house for the woman he thought he saw, and the twins discover that their mom's maiden name is Metri, and their dad is clueless about her death. Dali figures out that their mom was Mr. Ichijo's mistress, and it's time to put Mrs. Ichijo to the test. In Mrs. Ichijo's room, Dali hangs Migi up to trick her into thinking Metri's ghost has come back to haunt her. Mrs. Ichijo screams in fear, thinking the ghostly figure wants to take her stuff, and bolts out of the room. The twins notice how freaked out Mrs. Ichijo gets at the sight of what looks like their mom, leading them to think she's the one who killed her. They have to hide when Mrs. like their mom. Ichijo stalks around the house with a pair of sharp scissors, ready to stab Metri. The twins realize that if Mrs. Ichijo is truly the killer, she wouldn't be roaming the house trying to take out a ghost with scissors. Just when Mrs. Ichijo is about to find the twins hiding, her husband walks in and tells her to chill and put the scissors down. As the twins try to sneak away, Mrs. Ichijo throws her scissors at them, pinning their clothes to the floor. The twins manage to escape, and Eiji notices footsteps in the hallway. While Dali distracts the dog, Migi tries to sneak out but freaks out when he sees Eiji standing in front of him. Migi drops to the floor as Eiji closes in. Suddenly, Eiji starts wetting himself and screams at the ghost in front of him. He bolts down the hallway in terror, and the twins realize Eiji is their guy. The next morning over breakfast, Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama welcome their son back home. Mrs. Sonoyama admits they were both ready to sneak into the Ichijo's house to bring him back. When she starts talking about family and warmth, Migi realizes his brother must be starving and tricks his parents into thinking he's sick. While Akiyama watches tearfully, Migi smiles from the wardrobe as Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama take care of his hungry brother. In the next scene, Eiji starts losing his mind. Under their self-made hideout, Migi and his brother come up with a plan to find out why Eiji killed their mom 8 years ago. Dali steps up to interrogate Eiji, while Migi focuses on his studies. The next morning, after Migi says goodbye to his adoptive parents, Dali puts on his Seili wig and grins, ready to charm the truth out of Eiji. In the lunchroom, Eiji brushes off his friends when they ask what kind of girls he's into. He heads out of the room to hurl up his lunch. While he's throwing up and thinking about the ghostly lady he spotted a few nights before, Dali sneaks a peek into Eiji's stall and playfully teases him. Eiji warns the weird girl to zip it, but Dali skips out of the bathroom, having fun. Eiji chases after Dali and grabs his wig. Dali freezes, terrified of revealing his real blonde hair. When Eiji offers to pay Dali to keep his bulimia secret, Dali flings the cash into the air and flirts back. Eiji gets flustered, and the camera zooms in on the half necklace Migi gave Dali on their pretend date. The next day, Eiji shares a bunch of old pictures from when he was just a kid, and Dali spots the blouse he thought belonged to their mom. Eiji tells him those were his favorite PJs, and Dali questions him about a missing button in some photos. Eiji can't remember what happened to it and quickly changes the subject. He asks Dali when she stopped believing in Santa, and Dali bitterly replies that Santa never came to their house like he did for other families. Eiji Migi feels sorry for his new buddy and asks if she has any pics of her at 5 years old. Dali shuts down that request, reminding him that picture sharing is just to keep him from blabbing about his bulimia at school. As Dali struts off, Eiji mentally complains about the one-sided sharing. Out of a mix of curiosity and desperation, Eiji wanders around the school looking for the mysterious girl. While Akiyama walks Migi to his next class, Migi spots Sali's necklace in front of the bathroom and gets excited. At home, Migi tells his brother about the return of his crush, but Dali harshly reminds him that his beloved Sali has skipped town. The next day, Migi puts up posters around the school, and Dali smirks at his brother's terrible drawing of his dream girl. Akiyama helps Migi turn his mediocre drawings into a more realistic portrait of Sali. The new drawing gets more attention, and Migi realizes that the girl in it looks just like the one Eiji is trying to find. Migi follows Eiji around school and gives Akiyama a hard time for trying to buddy up to him. Eiji meets up with Dali in her disguise and blushes. Dali gets Eiji to tell him about his Christmas when he was 5. While Eiji chats away about his Christmas memories, Migi walks in and grabs Dali's hand. Eiji holds on to Dali's other hand, and Dali awkwardly announces that he's dating Eiji now. The next day, Dali visits Eiji, planning to hypnotize him into revealing the truth about his mom's death. While Migi is causing a scene at home, Dali cooks up a scheme to get Eiji to lie down. After a few failed attempts, Dali resorts to seduction. Summoning all his courage, he kisses Eiji on the lips and pushes him onto the bed. Meanwhile, Mr. Sonoyama tells Migi how he won over his wife after she turned him down a bunch of times. While Dali is hypnotizing Eiji, getting him to spill secrets about his Christmas as a kid, Migi shows up at the window, trying to win Dali's heart. Eiji snaps out of his hypnosis and pushes Migi out the window. Dali manages to save his brother but ends up hurting his hand in the process before turning to Eiji and accusing him of attempted murder. Eiji, still half asleep, mumbles some confusing things. Suddenly, Eiji confesses that on Christmas Eve, a strange woman showed up at his window and tried to take him, but he pushed her away. Young Eiji saw blood from the woman's injured head and called for his mom. Unfortunately, when Mrs. Ichijo arrived, Metri's body was nowhere to be found. Mrs. Ichijo convinced young Eiji that the figure he thought he pushed was a ghost, and the motherless twins stare at their mom's lifeless body. After hearing Eiji's confession, Dali dashes out of the Ichijo home to report his findings to Migi and kick off the punishment phase of their plan. Migi grabs his deceitful brother's hand and vows never to forgive him for tricking him into thinking Sali was real. Akiyama's sister teases her geeky brother for eating all alone in his room like a total loser. Akiyama tunes her out and calls out to Migi, who's hiding out in his bed. Migi squirms out like a worm and munches on food like he's got no arms at all. Meanwhile, Dali's curled up in their makeshift fort, trying to convince himself he can get revenge for their mom's death without Migi's help. Akiyama watches Migi eat like an animal for no good reason and tries to figure out why Migi ran away from home. When Migi asks his buddy to keep him hidden, Akiyama decides he's gonna help Migi escape whatever he's running from. Akiyama's sister tells him that Dali is there to see him. Akiyama freaks out when he sees Dali standing outside and asks how he even got there. Dali realizes he needs a quick excuse and lies, saying he crawled out of the window a second ago and wants Akiyama to invite him in again. Once inside Akiyama's house, Dali asks him to grab a cup of tea before sneaking into Akiyama's room. Dali spots a plate of food on the floor and goes to chat with his brother. He tries to drag Migi out of the wardrobe but stiffens when Akiyama opens the door. Akiyama asks Dali to help him with a math problem they learned in school, and Dali reluctantly agrees. While Dali shows Akiyama the ins and outs of a graph, a noise comes from the wardrobe. When Akiyama insists on checking it out, Dali slaps him in a panic and apologizes for being extreme to keep Akiyama focused. Dali mentions he made a promise to their mom, and Akiyama pictures Mrs. Sonoyama holding a hammer, pushing Dali to be number one. Akiyama tells his strange friend to ditch that promise and just be himself. Akiyama's words hit home for Migi, who's hiding in the wardrobe, as he remembers all his good times. Akiyama's sister scolds him, giving Migi the chance to pull Dali into the wardrobe. Migi steps out and tells his brother he couldn't care less about avenging their mom's death, and he won't take orders from his selfish brother anymore. While Migi is just having fun with Akiyama, Dali swears to his deceased mom that he'll do whatever it takes to get revenge for her death. Back at home, Mrs. Sonoyama shows Dali the Halloween costume she picked for him. The next morning over breakfast, Dali decides he's going to make a scene and mess Eiji up at the Halloween party the villagers are throwing. Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama notice that Dali isn't eating as much and comment on it. Dali shovels down his food, holding back his feelings while thinking about his wandering brother. After chowing down on a meal meant for two, Dali slips into the bathroom to hurl up half of it. As the day drags on, he struggles with stuff he used to nail with Miji's help. After flubbing an attempt to massage Mr. Sonoyama's shoulders, Mr. Sonoyama tries to lift Dali's spirits by suggesting a warm bath together. In the tub, he shows Dali a rubber duck and explains that by blocking one of the eyes, you can shoot out stronger water jets. Dali takes this to heart and decides to wipe Miji's influence off him and plan to avenge their mom's death solo. The next day, Dali shows up at the Halloween bash dressed as a vampire mosquito. He watches as the announcer calls out the contestants. When his fake name is announced, he totally flops. which earns him a chorus of boos from the crowd. While his adoptive parents try to comfort him about his so-called stage trauma, Dali can't help but notice the girls swooning over Eiji's outfit. When the girls predict Eiji will win, Dali smirks, knowing he turned the winner's throne into a death chair. But trouble brews when Eiji shows up looking like a sad beggar. Dali starts brainstorming on how to help Eiji win, imagining him sitting on the death chair. A brilliant idea hits Dali, so he starts spreading rumors to hype up Eiji's costume. Before long, the crowd is throwing cash at Eiji while spinning heart-wrenching lies about his boring outfit. Just as planned, Eiji wins, and Dali relishes watching him take a seat in the death chair and lose his head in front of the gullible crowd. To Dali's shock, Eiji refuses to sit in the winner's throne, making Dali lose it when the announcer calls out Akiyama and Migi as the next winners. Akiyama is over the moon, but Migi shoves him aside and yanks off his head costume. Mrs. Sonoyama is stunned to see her son in another outfit as Migi strides up to the winner's throne all proud. Dali tries to stop Migi from sitting in the chair, but Migi ignores him. The trap springs, sending the crowd scattering in fear. Dali lifts his head from the grass to see his brother's lifeless body, then gets blindsided by the sight of Eiji knocked out on stage. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ichijo's eyes light up wildly when she hears a strange sound coming from the hospital. After Akiyama tells Migi that Eiji's out of the hospital, Miji's mind starts racing, trying to figure out why Eiji would save him during the Halloween party. He sneaks into his adoptive parents' house and sees Mrs. Sonoyama taking care of a really sick Dali. Migi decides to clear things up by pretending to be Sally, Dali's fake female persona. At the Ichijo's front door, Eiji stops his mom from sending Sally away, bringing him into his room instead. Eiji tells his nosy mom to back off, and Migi plays along. He asks Eiji why he saved the Halloween costume champ, and Eiji admits he wasn't even into Hitori. He was just trying to make up for his past mistakes. After sending his snooping mom off on an errand, Eiji shows Migi a secret room with a model of the whole village before confessing that his mom keeps an eye on everything to protect his secret. When Migi asks why he has such a huge secret to hide, Eiji reveals that when he was 5, he pushed a woman out of the window, and his mom convinced him that it was just in his head. Eiji goes on to say that at first, he believed his mom, but then he saw a life-sized figure of the woman he pushed from his sister's collection of real people living in the village. He tells Migi that his mom's always worried to death that the past will catch up with him, but she suspects someone else is to blame. Eiji mentions that the twin he thinks is Hitori is in trouble and he needs to warn him. When Migi wonders why Sally should be the one to warn Hitori, who really is Dali, Eiji points out it's obvious Sally had a thing for him. Just when things are heating up, Mrs. Ichijo barges in and threatens the kids, but Eiji plays the hero and goes after her. Unfortunately for Migi, Mrs. Ichijo grabs his wig. Migi says, "Screw it," and reveals his real blonde hair. As Migi tries to sneak out of the house, Mrs. Ichijo screams in fury. He trips and darts into Eiji's sister's room to hide. When Mrs. Ichijo knocks on her youngest child's door, Eiji tries to keep her away by mimicking her voice, but he goes soft, and the little sister slips out of his grasp. Just when Migi is freaking out about being found out, the young girl covers for him. Once Mrs. Ichijo is gone, the little girl spills that Mrs. Ichijo isn't really her or Eiji's biological mom, and just pretends to be part of the happy family act for the sick woman. Mrs. Ichijo loses it and runs over to the Sonoyama's house to take out Hitori, aka Dali. Inside the Sonoyama's home, she drugs the elderly couple. Migi heads home after the young girl tells him to get out of the village. He finds the couple asleep and rushes to check on his brother. In his room, Migi sees Dali tied up on the bed and races to save him, but Mrs. Ichijo outsmarts him. She ties up the twins and demands they reveal where their mother is hiding. Migi calls out the wicked woman for killing their mom, and Mrs. Ichijo just cracks up. She lets a tear roll down her cheek before casually saying she'll take one of them out to cover her tracks. When the crazy lady asks the twins which one will bite the dust for the other, Dali steps up, willing to sacrifice himself for Migi. As Mrs. Ichijo pulls out a scarf and slowly tightens it around Dali's neck, Migi watches the life fade from his brother's eyes. Just when Dali is about to go, Mrs. Ichijo loses her grip and starts coughing like a lunatic. Then, Mrs. Mikan shows up with her cleaning brush. Migi asks the housekeeper how she's still alive. Mrs. Mikan explains that she was buried alive after Mrs. Ichijo caught her, but her youngest kid, Karen Ichijo, dug her out. She also spills the tea that she met Karen's birth mom and found out Mrs. Ichijo can't have kids. Right before Mrs. Mikan can reveal who Eiji is, Mrs. Ichijo lunges at her. Mikan dodges and throws some shade back at Mrs. Ichijo, but then, Mrs. Ichijo knocks the cleaning brush out of Mikan's hands and starts whacking her with a stick like a total nut job. She shoves Mikan to the bottom of the stairs, and Mikan hugs her before they tumble down together. On the ground, Mikan grabs a mop stick to fight back, but Mrs. Ichijo pulls a knife on her. The house dog comes to save Mikan, and she rushes to free the twins. After getting the boys outside, Mrs. Ichijo takes Mikan out just before she can spill the beans about about Eiji. The twins hop on a bike and seek shelter from the rain in a wooden building. Migi says they should head back to check on Mr. and Mrs. T, but Dali shuts him down, so they spend the night there. The next morning, someone drops off a meal at the door, and Dali figures out they've crashed at a shrine. He tells Migi it's chill to make the shrine their pad, but Migi whines about missing Mrs. Sonoyama's cherry pie. Dali chucks the bike, which is their only ride, into the gutter, and Migi leaps in to save it. Migi yells at Dali that the bike is the only gift he's ever had. Dali jumps in, clocks his brother, and calls him out for picking Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama over his real family. Migi punches back and labels Dali a traitor for being ready to die for him. Dali goes after Migi and blames him for trusting Akiyama and getting close to him. Migi hits back hard, cursing Dali for letting him fall for someone who's actually decent. Dali tries to drown Migi, but pulls him up after a few seconds. When Migi says they'll expose the Ichijo secrets and go back to living with the Sonoyamas, Dali beats him up. A moment later, it sinks in, and Dali decides to respect what his brother wants. He grabs the bike and lets Migi ride it back to Oregon Village. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ichijo sets up the twins to take the fall for Miken's murder. In the village, the twins figure out they've been set up for murder. They promise to expose the Ichijo's dark secrets and head back to Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama. Akiyama shows up at the crime scene, wondering where his buddy went. At home, Akiyama jumps when he sees Migi in his room and hugs him tight. A few minutes later, Migi spills the beans about Miken's death and asks Akiyama for help. Akiyama agrees to do whatever it takes to clear Migi's name. He gets a light bulb moment and steps out to grab a weapon. With Migi alone now, he tries to coax Dali out of the wardrobe to join them. Just as Dali is about to step out, Akiyama walks back in with Maruta, and Migi immediately goes after Maruta. After a few seconds, Maruta asks the boys if they're worth his help. Migi questions Akiyama about bringing Maruta along. Akiyama explains that Maruta has a gadget in his bag to help take down the Ichijos. Migi bites his tongue and asks the little guy for help, but Maruta insists on being called Lord Maruta. The chubby kid names their crew the Beaver Team. He pulls out his drone and its controller to contact Karen. While the clumsy kid works on his controller, Migi whispers to Akiyama that he doesn't trust Maruta. When Akiyama tries to convince Migi that Maruta wants to be his pal, a raccoon dog approaches, and Maruta accidentally drops his controller. Migi rolls his eyes at the broken controller and the clumsy kid on the floor. He tries to bring up introducing Akiyama to Dali, but Maruta gets up and climbs a streetlight, taking off his beaver hat to signal. Karen sees the signal from her room, and Akiyama realizes the fat kid and Karen are using Morse code to communicate. In Akiyama's room, Maruta explains his chat with Karen. He says that she can only help if they reach her through her window. Akiyama praises Maruta for his smart thinking, and Migi starts calling Maruta by his lord title. Maruta shyly asks Migi to drop the title. He leads the boys to his secret lair to brainstorm their plan, while Dali shares signs with Migi. In the lair, Migi suggests they kidnap Karen to force Mrs. Ichijo to spill the truth, while Akiyama points out the supplies they need for the plan. When Akiyama complains about needing more help, Dali reveals himself. After a moment of confusion, the twins share their secret identities and mission with Akiyama and Maruta. While the two guys cry from sympathy, the twins ask them to keep the secret, and the four boys promise to uncover the Ichijo's mysteries. Akiyama shows up at the crime scene in a creepy bird costume to distract the officers. Maruta signals to Karen before tossing the end of a rope into his room. Karen ties up the rope with a killer knot, and the twins follow Maruka up. As they climb, the boys realize they're hanging over a field of barbed wire. Maruta freaks out, freezing in fear while the branch starts to sag. Migi gives him a few slaps to snap him out of it, and Maramuta comes back to life after a hard bump. The three boys crawl faster than light. Maruta and Migi make it into the house, but Dali hangs back, scared stiff. When the tree branch gives way, Migi takes a leap and balances Dali's weight to keep him from dropping into the barbed wire. The twins climb into the room and are hit with the surprise of their lives when they catch Maruka and Karen sharing a moment. After stopping Maruka from making moves on the little girl, the twins fill Karen in on their hostage plans. Karen tells them that Iji is the only way to get to Mrs. Ichijo. She's relieved to find out she isn't the crazy woman's biological daughter, the one who wants everything and everyone to be just perfect, like a fancy set of silverware. She begs the boys to trash the Ichijo family, and Maruta swears he'll bring complete chaos. After a weirdly romantic moment with Maruta, Karen steps up to lead the charge in Eiji's snatching. Karen pretends to have a stomachache to distract her dad while the boys sneak into Eiji's room. The twins remember Karen saying Eiji is locked up in a special room, going through their mom's whack program. Once they reach the room, Maruta hits the floor in panic when he sees Eiji lying in a crib wearing diapers. The freaked out rodent boy can't believe how messed up the Ichijos must be to do this to a 13-year-old. Eiji starts crying, and Migi tries to lighten the mood with silly faces. The twins finally lead Eiji to the second floor, and Maruta calls out to get Mrs. Ichijo's attention to kick off their plan. He nervously agrees to film the whole thing as proof, and the twins get him hyped. While they move the baby-fied Eiji, Migi asks Dali if he still wants to kill him. Dali tells his brother that nothing's gonna stop Eiji from being their mom's killer. Migi tries to change his mind, reminding him that Eiji helped him twice. Eiji starts crying like a little kid, and Miji's silly face isn't cutting it anymore for the whacked-out kid. Dali tries to scare Eiji by making a goofy face, and Migi is impressed with him. The dog sneaks under Maruda's hiding spot, and Maruda freezes with fear. Mrs. Ichijo rushes in like a crazy chicken with its head cut off, heading straight for the confinement room to check on Eiji. Maruda wakes up and bolts upstairs to find Eiji. Mrs. Ichijo goes nuts and follows the sound of the toddler's cries. She spots the twins taking Eiji from the confinement room, and Maruda lifts the camera. He keeps filming the crazed woman below, and the twins join him. Dali pulls a knife to Eiji's throat and tells Mrs. Ichijo to spill all the dirty secrets of her family. Mrs. Ichijo grabs a chair and agrees to tell them everything they want to know. Mrs. Ichijo shares the story of Metri, the twins' mom. Once, there was a girl named Reiko who dreamed of having a happy family. To make it happen, she got a house and married a doctor. Everything seemed perfect until they hired a bumbling maid. Reiko took the clumsy maid under her wing and trained her like the little sister she'd always wanted. But then, Reiko hit a major bump in the road when she learned she couldn't have kids. So, she convinced her maid to sleep with her husband and have babies for her to raise as her own. Reiko became totally obsessed with getting the maid pregnant and lost it when her husband fell for the maid. Mrs. Ichijo continues, explaining how Reiko became pregnant after locking the maid in a confinement room. Reiko had a son, Eiji, while the maid gave birth to two identical blonde boys. Eventually, the maid escaped with her kids, and the rest is history. Mrs. Ichijo is thrilled to be free from Metri's curse, but the twins call her out for blaming Metri for a medical issue. Mrs. Ichijo says she's done talking and climbs creepily up to the second floor. She knocks the camera out of Maruda's hands, leaving him frozen in fear. One of the twins, holding a knife to Eiji's neck, asks Mrs. Ichijo if she plans to kill them like she did to Mikan. Migi swings the knife around to defend, but Mrs. Ichijo grabs it and tosses it aside like it's nothing. She reaches out to Eiji, but he sees a vision of the woman he pushed out of the window 8 years ago and pushes his mom off the barricade. The twins watch in shock as Mrs. Ichijo falls to her death and ask Eiji to explain. Eiji turns around and reveals he's their brother. Almost 13 years ago, the maid, Metri, had triplets, 2 identical boys and 1 little dark-haired kid. Mrs. Ichijo, faking a pregnancy, takes the dark-haired baby and locks Metri, along with her remaining 2 kids in the confinement room. She treats Metri and the kids like prisoners and keeps the 3rd child hidden from her. After 5 years, the twins manage to pick the lock and escape with Metri. In the present, the twins deny any connection to Eiji, but Eiji admits that right before pushing the blonde woman out of the window, she told him to come home with her to meet his brothers. Eiji asks the twins where their mom is hidden, and Dali coldly tells him she's dead. Migi asks Eiji to look out for his mom, and Eiji slowly heads downstairs to finish what he started. Meanwhile, Karen is acting all dramatic, trying to keep Mr. Ichijo in her room. Eiji grabs his injured mom and leads her into a dark room. Migi glances at Dali, trying to evaluate Eiji's intentions, but Dali brushes him off, blaming Migi for falling for Eiji's act. Mr. Ichijo steps out of Karen's room, confused about why the twins are breaking into his house in the middle of the night. When he threatens to call the Sonoyama couple, Maruda jumps in, claiming he's Karen's boyfriend. Suddenly, they all hear Mrs. Ichijo screaming from the confinement room and rush downstairs to see what's going on. Mr. Ichijo finds his wife's bloody body slumped against the wall and cries out in agony. Karen pushes Mr. Ichijo aside to check the body, but Mrs. Ichijo freaks out and rushes out like a chicken with its head cut off. She locks her husband and the kids in the confinement room, declaring she's chosen to live for Eiji. She adds that she and Eiji plan to start over in a new village. The evil woman taunts the victims, saying no one will miss them and they'll all die trapped in the room. Eiji tricks Mrs. Ichijo into thinking he wants to escape with her. He gets close and stabs her. Mrs. Ichijo drops to the floor in shock, while Eiji sets the Ichijo family diorama on fire. He throws the burning briefcase into the living room and watches the flames spread throughout the house. Meanwhile, in the confinement room, Karen spills the beans on Mrs. Ichijo's wicked acts to the confused and clueless Mr. Ichijo. Maruda gnaws a tiny hole in the door with his rodent-like teeth, while smoke from the living room seeps into the room. Mr. Ichijo tries to break down the door using a crib, but it splinters apart. He passes out from the smoke, and Dali grabs a piece of the broken crib to smash the door. The wood splits apart, and Migi starts banging his head against the door. When Migi's head starts to bleed, Dali tries to pull him back, but Migi pushes him away. He vows that they'll survive and reunite with their adoptive parents to munch on some pie, and Dali hugs his optimistic little brother. Then, out of nowhere, the door breaks open. Akiyama appears on the other side, covered in bird cages, and helps free the trapped people from the confinement room. Akiyama comes up with a plan to escape the burning house and dodge the barbed wire. He sets a stool by the window and signals his friends to jump. When it's Maruda's turn, he freezes in fear, but he finds the courage to jump when Karen promises to do something nice for him. Akiyama saves the dog and leaps out of the fiery building with it. Just as the group is about to escape, Akiyama realizes Eiji Eiji is still trapped inside. He mentions he saw Eiji hugging Mrs. Ichijo's lifeless body, looking like he's ready to go down with the ship. The twins rush to the building's entrance, and the water flea song they heard every day growing up starts playing. Back inside, Eiji lays Mrs. Ichijo's body on a bed and lies next to her. He remembers his mom playing the water flea song on the piano for him 8 years ago, while the group watches the house burn slowly to the ground. Dali recalls his memories with Eiji and notices how similar they are. He skips into the house to rescue Eiji, ignoring Migi's warnings. In the smoky room, Eiji sees a vision of the Milky Way on the ceiling and remembers how happy he was when his mom drooled and fell asleep during a visit to a science museum. He gazes at his mom's lifeless body and confesses that he once wanted to be a doctor like his dad before apologizing for how things turned out. Eiji holds his mother's hands and succumbs to the emptiness. Dali suddenly appears and interrupts Eiji's peaceful moment of letting go. He tells Eiji that even though he's here to get back at those who hurt his mom, he's starting to see how much they actually share. Eiji whips out a knife and pushes Dali to take him out, but Dali isn't having it. As he shares his own plans for revenge, Migi crashes through the window, calling Dali out for walking into a burning place. Dali hits back, saying Migi did the same, and suddenly Migi's behind goes up in flames. Annoyed by Migi's screams, Eiji snaps at him to shut it and scram. Dali points out it's classic Migi to mess up their plans and adds that the best revenge would be for Eiji to live in shame. He grabs Eiji's arm and dashes out of the smoky room. Eiji yanks his arm away and accidentally shoves Dali into the fiery living room. Migi shouts for Dali and jumps into the fire, pulling Eiji down with him. Migi narrowly dodges being crushed. Realizing how serious things are, he sees a ghostly figure taking shape in the smoke it's Mikan. The figure clears the air, and Migi spots Dali knocked out on the other side of the room. Dali comes to and calls for Eiji, while Mikan's ghost sucks up the smoke to clear a path for Eiji. The twins spot Eiji's unconscious body stuck under a big chandelier, and Dali calls out for him in a panic. Ignoring Migi's warnings, Dali crawls under the chandelier to try and lift it. Migi jumps in to help, and the two oddballs start heaving the chandelier. Eiji wakes up and tells them to let him go, thinking it's better to die, but Dali insists that once they all survive this fire, they'll head home and chow down on some cherry pie. When the twins drool over their adoptive mom's awesome cherry pie, Eiji imagines enjoying it with his sister and the whole crew. He smirks and joins his brothers in lifting the chandelier, then lets them yank him up and drag him out of that cursed Ichijo building. The ambulance crew rolls up, and the three brothers duck behind a fence to avoid the cops. When Migi reassures Eiji their folks will hide them, Eiji stands up and walks into the crowd. Mr. Ichijo rushes over to his son, but Eiji brushes him off. With a serious look, Eiji confesses to killing his mom, burning the house down, and taking out Mrs. Mikan. In the next scene, the twins watch as the police lead Eiji to their vehicle. After Eiji got arrested, the cops found Maruda's camera, and miraculously, the tape inside wasn't burned. The recording of Mrs. Ichijo confessing, along with Mr. Ichijo's fiery defense, helped chop down Eiji's sentence, but he still had a long stretch to serve in prison. Meanwhile, Maruda and Karen took their relationship to the next level long-distance style, and the twins kept living as Hitori like old times. Even though Migi begged, Dali wouldn't keep pretending to be the old couple's grandson. He showed Migi the burn scar that made him different from his brother, and Migi tried to convince him to reveal himself to their adoptive parents, but Dali wasn't about to burden the nice old folks. He promised his brother he'd always be in the shadows with him. At school, Dali helped Migi cheat his way to the top and become popular. Akiyama pulled Migi aside for a chat. Migi shared why Dali had to stay in the shadows and asked Akiyama to keep it under wraps. Akiyama agreed to keep quiet, but then asked Migi if he really wanted to live as Hitori forever. Migi seriously confessed he had been thinking about how different he and Dali were. He said he didn't want to keep being Hitori. What he really wanted was for him and his brother to just be themselves, Migi and Dali. Dali, hiding behind some bushes and eavesdropping, pondered his choice to stay as Migi's shadow. He tried to convince himself that all he needed was to keep living in that role. On Christmas Day, Mrs. Sonoyama's cheerful questions about the future hit hard for Dali. He didn't respond to Migi and eventually fell asleep. In his dreams, Dali felt trapped under a table while Migi was living it up. He dreamt of everyone leaving him behind, forgetting he even existed. Dali woke up with tears streaming down his face. He spotted two gifts instead of one under the tree in Migi's room. Migi woke up, realizing his gift was split into two. Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama knocked for a sec before opening their son's door. Migi asked why he had two presents, but his parents insisted he open them up. When Migi saw the two totally different gifts, Mrs. Sonoyama gushed about having a kid who loves cooking and another who's into science. Dali gasped in the wardrobe, and Mr. Sonoyama noted it took them a while to figure it out, but they did eventually. Mrs. Sonoyama asked her sons to come down when they were ready, and Migi beamed with happiness. He ran to the wardrobe to call Dali, but Dali wouldn't come out. Migi told Dali that from that moment on, their differences would be obvious, and they could feel and act however they wanted. He went on to say that the one thing that would always stay the same is that Dali's happiness would forever be his happiness and vice versa. Dali shed a tear of realization, and Migi gently opened the wardrobe door. Just when the old couple thought their kids would never open up, Migi strolls into the room with Dali trailing behind him. The loving parents feel a rush of joy as their twins take their usual spots at the dining table. The family of four cheers in happiness to celebrate Christmas, and Mrs. Sonoyama serves Dali his favorite dish, omelets. Dali asks his adoptive mom how she figured out omelets were his favorite, and Mrs. Sonoyama tells him not to underestimate her mom instincts. Mr. Sonoyama jumps in and mentions he knew when the twins got into a spat during Halloween. He and his wife reveal that while Migi was out, Dali always made sure to finish his omelets among all the other meals. With that, the twins dig into their Christmas breakfast with glee while their parents watch. Mrs. Sonoyama asks the boys what their names are, and Migi quickly says he's Migi, but Dali, all teary-eyed, calls himself Dami. When Mrs. Sonoyama gets excited about the twins' beautiful names, Migi and Dami, Dali corrects her, saying his real name is Dali. The family enjoys a fun-filled Christmas together. Fast forward 13 years, and the twins and the Sonoyama couple are still one big happy family. Akiyama has formed a bond with Mr. Sonoyama, and Maruta experiences a bit of a glow-up. Migi has stayed a bit childish, while Dali has embraced his nerdy side. Mrs. Sonoyama calls her son in to help her with a cherry pie, and Akiyama follows the twins into the house with Maruta. The guys are blown away when Mrs. Sonoyama chats with Mikin through writing. They're amazed at how well Migi and Dali coordinate their lie knots, while everyone waits nervously for Eiji's arrival. Eiji, Karen, and their dad show up at the Sonoyama place, and the hosts greet them with joy. Dali impersonates Sally one last time to lighten the mood, and Eiji breaks into laughter. Everyone else joins in, and Dali hides under the table, all embarrassed. Eiji tries to comfort Dali, but Migi swoops in, declaring he'll never let Sally go to Eiji, while Maruta hugs Karen. Akiyama creepily asks Dali to wear the Sally wig 3 times a week, and Dali playfully tackles him. Mrs. Sonoyama reminds the boys to eat their pie before it gets soggy, and everyone obeys. Migi asks Eiji what he thinks about their famous cherry pie, and Eiji admits he loves it. In the next scene, Eiji pays his respects to Metri's grave, looking up at the sky and saying that when he dies and reunites with his mom, he'll make it a point to tell her he lived an imperfect but happy life. He turns to his brothers, asking what their next move is. The twins mention they have something to prove, and the scene shifts. Mr. and Mrs. Sonoyama, along with everyone else, say their goodbyes to Dali. Mr. Sonoyama steps in when his wife tries to board the train with Dali, telling him to come home if things get tough. Dali hugs his family and friends goodbye as the train doors close. Migi watches quietly as the train pulls away, and Maruta asks if he's okay with Dali leaving. Migi solemnly tells his friend he understands Dali's journey and supports him in pursuing his passion for learning, while Migi stays back to focus on becoming an artist. The two boys recite their usual mantra in their hearts. No matter how far apart they are, they're always connected. Then, Maikon's apparition appears, and the scene fades to black.